The future belongs to those who dare, those who will do extra. Hi, I'm Mark Croskery. Welcome to Business Live Extra, the program that looks beyond dollars and cents to the movers and shakers in business and the capital markets. Today's guest has the markets calling him Gary Musk, and the company he represents Super Supreme. He has over 20 years experience in the area of corporate finance inside and outside of Jamaica, and he has made a career out of helping Jamaicans build wealth through investing and companies create immense shareholder value. He is an executive chairman and sits on the boards of multiple successful companies. He was named the CEO in Jamaica, that's the top CEO for the financial year 2015, and served as the deputy chairman on the board of the JSE. He is no stranger to us, our first two-time guest, wearing a different cap. Joining us on BLE today is Gary Peart, executive chairman of Supreme Ventures Limited. Gary.
Hey, Mark.
Welcome to BLE again.
Thank you very much.
You know, it's good to have you.
Good to be back.
As I said, different cap today. You know, we don't get the story much about what happened in 2017. You know, why Supreme Ventures, why SVL. A lot of persons call it a takeover, but it's really change of board,
yes.
Board control. Why? How did SVL come on your radar, Chris Berry's radar, Mayberry's radar?
Well, actually, it was a corporate finance transaction. We were hired by the largest shareholder at the time in Supreme Ventures to raise capital or debt for them to take a further stake in Supreme Ventures. And we were successful in doing that. And we raised a hybrid of debt and equity and got a cadre of investors, both debt and equity, to come into the business. I think at the time, based on how things started to pan out, we took the position that if we had so many of our clients invested in this entity, we needed a seat on the board, both Chris and myself. And that didn't find favor with the board at the time. Okay. And, you know, we had that whole excitement. But, you know, we prevailed, as we normally do. Mm-hmm. And we moved from there.
And, you know, at that early stage, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, did you have that outlook that you just felt you could move the earnings barometer as much as you've moved it to recently, like, let's say $1 billion, as much as $1 billion in a quarter?
Yeah, without a doubt. So when we had looked at Supreme, and it's one of the reasons that the major shareholder at the time approached us, because we had a unique way of looking at Supreme. So the market and everybody else saw Supreme as a lottery company. We saw Supreme as a transaction platform that had lottery bolted onto it. So when you turn the prism and you look on the business that way, you realize that there's significant expansion potential in this company. You know, because if you find the right businesses and put onto that transaction platform, you could expand this business vertically, horizontally, forward, backward, whichever way you want, diagonal, whichever way you want to go.
And Gary, when you say, just in simple terms, like transaction platform, you mean just like lots of customers and data, or what do you mean by that?
It's a combination. So, you know, via the lottery, we process, I won't give you the exact figure, but we process significantly more transactions than some of the largest companies combined in the country, you know. And so what it showed us and what we saw is that you had a very robust platform that could scale. And you could scale it in lottery, you could scale it in different businesses. So for example, a vibrant business that Supreme had at the time that most people weren't aware of is the PIN business, the phone PIN business. And at the time, they were number 2 in the marketplace. And since we have taken over, they are now a clear number 1. You know, but again, it's high volume, lots of transactions, and that backbone was able to carry it.
So, you know, in that timeline, 2017, you get in for like $9.20 a share, yes, maybe a bit less or so. You know, now, you know, 52-week high or new 52-week high, probably all-time high, 33 right, and change. You're at 27 or so in the market now. Right. I mean, again, this is some of the projections or the outlook you had as far back as then?
Yeah. So what had happened is that COVID delayed a lot of that. So what you're seeing, I mean, a lot of people are excited about the $1 billion quarter, and we are. But what basically happened is that, you know, I keep using the example of a spring, and what COVID did, it started to depress the spring, right? And then once the DRMA was lifted and all the curfews were gone, the spring has just exploded. And you see $1 billion coming from 600 million. But if we did not have COVID, you'd have seen us incrementally growing to that level, and we would have actually been past $1 billion by this time if things had worked accordingly. So I give you an example. One of our big businesses, the best times for them to earn revenue is between 8 o'clock and 1 a.m. in the morning. And so when you have curfews at 6 and 7.
Which business is this now?
There's a combination of them. So there's Acropolis as an example.
Okay.
We also have a machine business, a VLT machine business.
Okay.
We have the model of sports betting for post to post. It's more of a relationship type model. You know, so people come, they stay, they gamble.
So the whole curfews, restrictions,
it was massive.
Just wipe that out for the time.
It was a massive impact on the business. So what happened is that because of COVID, and one of the things we did, right, is that the moment we got to, COVID was at March, the second, the third week in March 2020.
2020, yeah.
And, you know, as leaders, you I don't want to sound like one of these sci-fi things, but as leaders, you exist in 3 different states. You know, there's a present, there's a future, and there's a hybrid of both.
Right.
You know, so you sell a vision, so you need to see what that vision looks like. Right. So you're constantly thinking in the future, where are you going to go with this business? Yes. And obviously, I was very clear as to where the business was going to go, but then COVID hit. And one of the first things that happened is within that first 2 weeks, I just went and did a lot of research. And, you know, what you found was that every time you had a pandemic, more than 50% of the companies going into the pandemic never come out of it, or they come out significantly worse. If they don't pivot, or just overall? It's just these are the statistics, right? You know, people just can't recover from the pandemic. You have another 20 to 30% of companies that they will take anywhere from 2 to 5 years to get back to where they were before the pandemic. And then you have anywhere from 10 to 15% that is just going to make a killing during that period. And, you know, one of the first things I did was to pull the team together and say, guys, which company do you want to be? You know, do you want a real, like, strategy session with them? And yeah, it started. I mean, because it was clear we're going into something that we're not fully understanding, but it was not the first time. You know, there's history there, and that's what history's for. At that point, Gary, you know, March 2020, you were executive chairman at that point, or you were? At that point, I was executive chairman. You were executive chairman. Yes. And what roughly, take us back, you were executive chairman when, like 2019, was it? Or? No, so I was appointed chairman, I think, in June 2019. Okay. June 2019, I believe. And I was chairman. Right. And then I became executive chair when the CEO left. So I took over the post of CEO and president as well. And, you know, in G7 countries, US markets, you know, you see some guys chair multiple boards, some, you know, 5 or more boards. We just saw Jeffrey Hall now, you know, chairman for Blue Power, or he's doing like 4 different boards. In your case, you're executive chairman. Right. I mean, how do you find you're balancing your time between, let's say, both roles? Well, again, as in a leadership role, one of the first things you have to do is to delegate and hire bright people. So once you're able to do that, it's really, your role is more a kind of coaching. And as I said, as one of the leaders in the business, you have to figure out where the business is going to go. So one of the things, as you know, I'm also the CEO of Mayberry. Yes. And one of the things Mayberry does, I mean, my role at Mayberry, I seek new opportunities. As executive chairman of SVL, one of my roles is to find new opportunities, but within the gaming space and or within the business I'm going to put on my platform. The gamut of SVL. Yeah. Right. So there's a twin in terms of the roles because they're similar. But more importantly, once you get to a particular leadership environment, it's really more about coaching. You know, I have a very, very strong team. And it's just, you know, we have our strategic plans. They know what their KPIs are. They know what they need to achieve. And I just make sure they're moving in the right direction. And once they are, I just focus on trying to bring in as much business as possible. And, you know, Gary, when you look at it, I mean, it's different entities, right? Right. But, I mean, you see tons of things happening in today's markets. I mean, as you mentioned, it's a transaction platform. You just keep layering on stuff. You layer on microfinance. Correct. And, you know, SVL is making up as much as 50%, 51% of Mayberry. No, of Mayberry Jamaican equities. Yes.
Which, flows up,
right.
to MIL.
But Mayberry still has other businesses separate from that, yes.
Is it possible, though, it might be far-fetched, but
right.
Is it possible one day that, SVL, SVG could actually consummate Mayberry into the platform?
Everything is possible. It's a function of the money. So I'm not in the same position as Jeffrey because Jeffrey owns a lot of the companies that he's chairman of.
Right.
So he's a major investor and producer. He's a major investor in Blue Power and Lumber Depot. Yeah. So he's just putting himself in charge. I mean, Scotia's a different story.
Right.
So that's the beauty about my job. I mean, I'm not the major shareholder. But one of my main roles is to make sure all the shareholders and all the directors are on the same page. Mm-hmm. Because when you look on the structure of SVL, the largest shareholder in SVL only owns 31% of the company.
Gotcha.
So when you're going to do something of a strategic nature, you have a cadre of investors that you have to speak to, whether via their directors or themselves as well. And what it does, it increases the level of governance in the company.
But really, from a forward-looking standpoint, earnings potential, there really is no limit to
Correct.
what you can layer on to, as you pose it, this transaction platform. We're going to come back to that. Sounds good, Gary. We take our first break on Business Dive Extra. We hear all about SVL when we return. Welcome back to Business Dive Extra. Supreme Ventures Limited is a premier lottery and gaming provider in Jamaica, formed in 1995. The company's first lottery operation launched in June 2001 with 2 lottery games and 180 terminals. SVL currently offers 11 lottery games in addition to the Just Bet and AnyBet live and virtual sports betting products, horse racing and video lottery terminals offerings. The company employs over 500 persons full and part-time across the group. Supreme Ventures Limited became publicly listed on the JSE in 2006 and is regulated by the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission, BGLC. Back with us is Gary Peart, Executive Chairman of the Supreme Ventures Limited. Gary, welcome back to BLE, Business Dive Extra.
Thank you.
Hey, Gary, came on a spark.
Yes.
You took on that business, not the asset, would you say, or is it just a business or some of the asset?
I prefer to say we inherited it.
All right, sometimes inheritance is good or bad.
Boy, I tell you at the start, boy, that's an inheritance I didn't really want.
But you're making it work.
Oh, we have. But again, we're talking about the start, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of the transaction, the transaction is that the limited liability company, SVREL, Supreme Ventures Racing and Entertainment Limited, has a 30-year lease from Caymanas Track Limited, which is a government entity. We also have an option to go for another 30 years. So effectively, it's a 60-year lease.
Okay.
And so that's how we got into it. And, there is an oversight body where in terms of the negotiation, there were certain things that were negotiated that at certain key timelines, etc., you're supposed to get these things done, The long and short of it is that the biggest item was that within 5 years, we need to invest at least $500 million. And we had the 5-year anniversary the other day, and the figure that we have invested is north of $3 billion.
Okay.
So we have spent a lot of time and put a lot of resources. And
Gary, that oversight body or that committee, etc., that's with government or that's with?
So that's primarily with Caymanas Track representatives, which are part of government.
Like stakeholders.
Yeah, you also have representatives from the Jamaica Racing Commission and also the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries.
Okay.
So it basically are stakeholders for the government for Caymanas.
Okay.
So they oversee the contract that we have. And as I said, the big ticket item was to spend $500 million, which we have blown past.
Blown past. And is the tote board is now in, and that's this year?
Unfortunately, no, the tote board hasn't come in as yet.
Okay.
But the tote board it should be up and running next week. Well, we're putting in the frames. The frame is up. The base is up.
Okay.
It should be operational, I think, by the end of May, the latest. Mm-hmm. But that will be up and running.
Okay, and it's going to be like one of those big digital ones like you see at Gulfstream or wherever in the U.S.
It's proper. So what has happened is that Caymanas has moved from something that, we were like, why would anybody do this, right? 'Cause the deal we got wasn't the greatest deal ever, right? But you're saddled with it. You get lemons, you have to make lemonade.
Lemonade. Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, have we made lemonade. And so Caymanas has now moved from being, for a better, this adopted child, to, in my opinion, the greatest potential of the companies within the group.
Okay.
Caymanas, in terms of the vision that I have for Caymanas, it has the potential to even reshape Jamaica in terms of what can happen. So later this year, we've done, what Solomon and Lorna has done over there has been amazing. And
walk us through. Solomon is the executive chair there.
Is the executive chairman.
And Lorna is
the general manager.
General manager.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
So what they have done with the team over there is just nothing short of miraculous, right? And so we're cycling through the end of phase 1, for want of a better word. So unlike a lot of other people that had different ideas, what we focused on was how could we increase the revenue? Because more revenue, you can pay more expenses. And, they have been able to do that. The Reggae 6, as you know, has just been phenomenal. Catch 9. We've been able to do a whole bunch of changes that has gone down very well with the punters. Because that is one of the strengths of the Supreme Ventures Group. Where then Lottery in Caymanas, we focus very much on the customer and the consumer. So they've done well there. And why I think it has the most potential now is that, later on this year, Solomon and I and Lorna are going to jump on a plane. We're going to fly to Dubai, New York, Australia. And we just need to find one billionaire, right? And convince them to breed and raise horses in Jamaica. Because Jamaica is 90 miles from Florida. Mm-hmm. And in Ocala, which is in Florida, when you get into winter, everybody sends their horses down there. So I stopped there to send them to Jamaica.
And that's a kind of is it more of a move to get the breeding stock better in Jamaica, or is it overall?
That is going to be an ancillary aspect of it. I think the big thing is that we're moving to get really serious big owners involved.
Okay.
We have a plan to get owners, more Jamaican owners, but we feel that we're building a worldwide product. And for you to have a worldwide product, you need to be able to attract worldwide owners. And I think when those owners start to come to Jamaica, they're going to need a house, they're going to want this.
Yes.
And, if I'm lucky, you can get Gandalfin Stables, for example.
Sure.
You have the Sheikh coming here.
Sheikh Mohammed to come, yeah.
Oh, my God. And he has to have dinner, right? Because he's here for 2 weeks, he has to have dinner, right? Yeah. You would never be able to see them, dinner, what he's throwing away is what we probably have our national debt at, right? And so I say it in jest, but I'm very serious about it. If you start to attract those kinds of people, that level of wealth here, it's going to transform St. Catherine, right? It's going to transform Caymanas. That will then give us the impetus to do more.
So from an outlook perspective, the track in your mind is going to stay there. The many different ideas of moving the track, et cetera, that's not really on the horizon right now.
Honestly, Mark, what I've learned over the last couple of years with Caymanas, you have a lot of people who said a lot of things, but they were not experts.
Yes.
And one of the things we do well at SVL and within the group is that we listen. We listen to everybody, but then we try to find experts. And then we listen again, right? So we don't come to something to say, hey, we know everything.
Everything,
right?
Yeah.
And then we distill, we come to a consensus, and we go down the road, right? So a lot of the different ideas, when you're the one that is drawing the check, right, it's a different story. So you can come to me and say, boy, Gary, raise the purse. You're going to get more revenue. But if I raise the purse and I don't get the revenue, my loss is bigger. And when I come to you, you're going to say, don't worry about it. Try something else.
So it sounds like Gary, because Caymanas has always had 1,000 ideas, but through Solomon and Lorna, you've really got them to focus on just delivering.
Yeah, it is
and
very
focus on the customer.
Yeah. We're investment bankers. As my good friend Howard Hamilton said, so what does investment bankers know about a racetrack? But I think we know a bit about it now. But you have to love people like Howard. Howard is at a stage in life where he can say anything. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. It's Howard. You have to love Howard, right?
Yes.
But unfortunately, for me, I have a checkbook to balance.
Yeah.
If Howard says it and it works, he jumps up on a podium. You see, I tell you, it didn't work. If it don't work, Howard, you lending me $100 million to pay the bill? Of course not.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to know what your responsibilities are. And we sit and we vision and we discuss a lot of the strategic plans. And thankfully, we're blessed. I mean, COVID started off very rocky. If you remember, you know, as I said, when COVID started, the first thing we did, I told you, everybody said we're going to come out and we're going to be in that 15%, but then we have to take some tough decisions, right? Because one of the mantras we had for COVID is that, listen, the government is trying to protect its people, and Supreme must be seen as a company that is abiding by the rule of law and also is assisting the government to achieve that mandate of protecting its people. But within that ecosystem, we'll try to maximize our revenue, yeah? And when businesses were shutting down and letting go of people, you know, when we the guys that came out and said, we need to do this.
Yes. Was that, Gary, would you say, as the executive chairman, was that one of your most toughest moments to handle or obstacles, or was there something else?
Not really. On the face of it, it was supposed to be. But, you know, an amazing thing about Caymanas happened, right? So we discovered that there are a couple people that, you know, really get the people riled up, right? So we had this demonstration. Probably you'd have seen it on TV,
it was
when they were burning the shirt.
In the media, yeah.
And the thing, right? So the best part about that demonstration, right, is that we have cameras, right? So the cameras is showing the people turning up for the demonstration. They start the demonstration, but the video guy didn't reach on time. So when the video guy reached, he had to stop the presentation, and then the video guy had to position them.
And restart the demonstration.
And then restart the demonstration, right? And I'm sitting there like, really? And so what I realized is that our message was not getting to all the stakeholders, right? And I think that was the aha moment for me. And what we did at that point in time, yes, we had to cut staff, we had to close certain aspects of the track, but that was the case right across the country. It wasn't because we didn't know how to run a racetrack and we were trying to punish you. That was a situation across the country.
You're operating with a certain framework.
Correct. And so we looked on and we said, these people aren't crazy. And so we went out there and we told them. They weren't happy to hear it, but they recognized it. It was right across the country. And I think what that started to do, it started to develop a level of trust, right? Because they're like, but what I'm saying...
For the overall Supreme Ventures group, not just the Caymanas Park asset.
No, well, the Caymanas Park asset was the last one that we dealt with in terms that we had to close it down, right? We had the other thing. People were comfortable with what we had to do, right? You know, all those stuff. And when we did that, you know, because, you know, everybody felt they were going to burn down the place, they're going to this, etc. But I love communicating. I love chatting, right? And
you personally got out there, Gary. I mean, you were out at the track. I mean, there are pictures of you in the media, etc.
Yeah. Solomon and thing, and then we had a forum where we invited all of the people that were saying all these negative things. We said, come.
You brought your investor relations into the field.
Yes. And we said, come, let's talk. So some of the smaller guys, they're like, okay, let's hear what's going on. They didn't turn up, and so people are like, whoa, what happened there? You know, they're willing to say this to us, but in front of the guys, they don't say it. And we got through that period. But then the best, you know, we started to see the best part of the stakeholders of Caymanas, because there's this perception about them, right? Yeah. And it manifested itself in two things, which I'm very, very proud of. The first one was the first memorandum of understanding that we signed with them. You know, Ian Passad was the person that fronted for them.
And is that when you started to put the financials also now out there too?
Yeah, we agreed to put out the financials monthly. And we came together and we said, hey, this is how we're going to do it. We'll front the money, but we'll take it back on the back end. They didn't expect, didn't want that. But we found a middle ground, and we actually ended up with an agreement. Right? I'm like, wow, look at this. This is a huge...
Sometimes you need that kind of tension clearing the air.
I guess, but I wouldn't want to do it, right? But then I must tell you, the greatest ever thing, you know, this is the one. I know you asked me what's the worst, but this one was the one that took the cake. So after you were trying to restart the economy, right? The tourism sector, you know, they were like out the gate, trying to get the protocols, etc. And we said, hey, we need to find a way to restart racing. So when we went and we got a long list of stuff and the amount of money that has to be paid, and we're like, whoa, we need to find a way to do this, right? Because in the last couple of years, we've gotten some flack, you know, why is it Caymanas is open and you can't do these other things? The fact is that every single sporting association had the ability to do the same thing we did with Caymanas. But they chose not to. As to why they didn't, that's their issue. I can't speak to that. But with Caymanas, it was very clear. You had to hire a consultant. It wasn't cheap. You had to go through a whole bunch of different protocols, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'll never forget one of the technocrats, and I mean, I have to publicly thank Herman Metcalf. She was one of the persons that really got the ball rolling on that when we couldn't move, right? You know, love her to death. And it got to a point where we were just pushing, and one of the technocrats said, well, you know what? Let them go on. Because them people that don't have Caymanas, them not understand rule of law. So within 1 week, we went and shut them down. Right? And we're like, we can work with that. And they came, and when we had the sensitization thing there, conferences, we looked at the guys and said, listen, they're all expecting us to fail. If you don't comply, this thing on lockdown and it's 40,000 of us, we'll get leaked.
Yes.
I'll never forget it. I said, boss, don't worry about it. And Mark, everyone.
Deal with it.
Listen, man, the grooms, the jockey, the trainers, the farriers, everybody chipped in.
Kind of remind you of the JDX, NDX days.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can use that, but I mean, it was amazing. You come around a corner and you hear a man sit in another group, where your mask, where your mask? And the level of maturity that was displayed by a set of people where the perception was that they don't listen to nobody, they don't this, etc., etc. And I was like this, I was so proud.
With the cohesion, the alignment.
And even to this day, it continues, you know, and it just showed what I thought. I figure it's a microcosm of the rest of Jamaica, right? That you have these guys that some of them are not too bright or educated, but if you communicate well enough and they understand the importance, they will come on board.
Great. We're going to come back to that. Gary Peart on the campaign trail at Caymanas. We like it. We take another break on Business Live Extra. More when we return with Gary Peart, Executive Chairman of SVL. Welcome back to Business Live Extra. SVL ended its first year of operations back in 2006 with sales of over 54 million US and has experienced consistent growth in its over 20-year history. This momentum has not changed as SVL continues to grow. SVL reported its largest quarterly net profit on record of Jamaican $1 billion for the 3 months ended March 31st, 2022, equating to Jamaican 37.7 cents per share. Revenue grew by 19% year over year for the quarter to $12.7 billion. Notably for the quarter, income from fixed odds wagering gaming grew by an astronomical 37%. SVL has been able to protect and grow its market share by being consistently innovative in the marketplace. Still with us is Gary Peart, Executive Chairman of Supreme Ventures Limited. Gary, welcome back.
Thank you.
You know, you talk about a phenomenal quarter.
Yes.
You know, is it something that was expected or it just came out of the pack from nowhere?
Well, it was expected by us. You know, as I indicated earlier, COVID delayed the changes that we were making. And we knew the moment you removed the RMA and the other COVID protocols and we were allowed to get back to regular hours, you're going to see this revenue and this profit just blow through the roof. And that's exactly what happened, because what we saw is that every single revenue line, product, subsidiary had record numbers for the quarter. You know, because as I said, it's been 2 years of delay that's now finally presenting itself.
Yes.
And you know, it was finally, you know, you have an expectation and you know it's there. And for it to finally show itself in that way was very pleasing.
Now, we know we don't give like revenue earnings forecasts in Jamaica yet, unlike the US markets. But I mean, Do you expect this level of profitability to continue for the rest of this year or the next coming quarters, or is this kind of a one-off
the answer to your question,
seasonal quarter?
Right. So the answer to your question is yes. You know, and what I can allude to is that one of the most successful launches of a product that we've ever had was Scratchers, right?
Okay.
And but Scratchers, the revenue from Scratchers for this quarter was only 3 weeks. So we feel that when you have a full quarter of Scratchers, there is more revenue and profit that will be generated from that. And then also, whilst I'm saying that we've moved away from curfews, the reality is that we didn't get the full benefit until we got into the month of March. Because remember, it was moved to 11, then it was moved to 12, until it was finally done away with. So what you have for the second quarter and the rest of the quarters going forward is just your full effect of all of that.
And Gary, you mentioned this point. So on Scratchers, although you only seen 3 weeks or under a month, no, you know, it went viral on social media. It's like huge marketing, branding. You know, the trucks have been like all over Jamaica and so forth. I mean, are you seeing, you know, a significant or a decent amount of revenue coming from it?
Yeah, it has outperformed our expectations. And, you know, it's another thing that we spent a lot of time preparing for it. And what the average person in the public might not remember, this is the third major attempt at Scratchers. You know, so Supreme itself tried it back in the day and it failed.
What they used to call it back in the day? Just, I don't know, scratch and win or something?
It was scratch and win or whatever. It certainly wasn't called Scratchers. And we did, I think the innovative thing, your hand mill is scratching you, that everything just really came together. It was just one of those things that everything you did just worked. And, you know, what was surprising, as I said, is that this is the third attempt. So we learned from the first 2 attempts. I mean, one was by SVL, one was by a different entity at the time. And there were probably 1 or 2 other hybrids of it. And I think we learned from that experience. And, you know, we've just seen just a phenomenal meeting, like the opposite of a perfect storm. You know, it has done very, very well.
And just really helped your brand and your goodwill overall.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
You know?
When you look at the results, what really, and a lot of analysts haven't really written about this yet, you know, from what we've seen in the marketplace, but your lottery revenue, when you break it out, you know, despite 2 competitors coming to the market, you know, Is Easy, Lucky Play, your lottery revenue grew even better than just the overall top line. I mean, you grew 30% plus just on that. I mean, and it just like seems like an anomaly or an oxymoron. Like it shouldn't be happening. I mean, your competitors come into the market, they're operating for a year plus, and you grew the quarter.
Right.
Not 19% cumulative, but you grew like 30% plus just on that line item. I mean, why?
It's simple. So first of all, right, SVL has always had a major competitor in the market, contrary to popular belief. That competitor was SVL. So as when you start the program, you speak about the fact that SVL started with 2 products, right? Certainly by 2017, when we came, it had gotten up to about 8 or 9 products, right? So they're doing about every 2 years a new product. Since we have come to the board, we're putting out an average of about 3 products a year.
3 new products a year?
Yes, on average, but people are just not picking it up, especially through
But when
COVID.
You put out 3 new, are you kind of culling a few products
so
at the
when
same
I
time?
when I refer to it as products, right, it's not products in the way you're looking at it, right? So you're thinking just lottery products. So we have put out 2 new lottery products. But we have also gone online or electronic with all the lottery products. There's a different distribution channel. We have come with mobile distribution. We have come with super sellers. You know, so
that can be a product itself.
Well, I refer to it colloquially as a product, but it is a different distribution channel.
Got you.
So you have products, different distribution channels, but there's been significant rework of what we're doing. So what has happened, and the key point is this, the success of Supreme is that we're not afraid to disrupt our own products. You know, so Cashpot has done very well, but that didn't stop us from coming with another one-ball game, right? That didn't stop us from coming with Scratchers, right? So we focus on what's most important, which is the customer, right? So once we understand what the customer is about, we make our changes based on the customer.
And Gary, super sellers, you know, we see those billboards, but what exactly is it?
Super seller is where you have an individual that has a handset that's similar to a telephone or your mobile phone, and they will walk around and they can physically sell you our lottery products.
Can they sell you, so it can be any lottery product under the SVL umbrella? Under the
SVL umbrella. So they will sell you, you pay for it, they give you a ticket that you can redeem at any location, and it's a much more nimble.
So they just got to be in Wi-Fi?
Yeah. So
pretty much. Okay.
You know, we have the data packages, etc. And it works pretty well because in some instances it's too expensive to set up brick and mortar in certain places. But if you find a key person, they can go in there, walk through the community, and it gets done.
So one of the things that kind of I noticed, you know, since 2017 to now, I mean, you've really gone heavily into, would you say, the branding and reinforcing the branding of Supreme Ventures and like all of these things you're mentioning, you know, Supreme Scratchers or Scratchers, you know, super sellers, all these things. I mean, it didn't feel like Supreme Ventures was doing that before. I mean, yes, you saw Cashpot, of course, a few other games, but you're really, you know, I mean, has the marketing cost increased dramatically, would you say, or are you just spending money better?
So it has always been there. I just think people are now focusing more on it. Right. So in nominal terms, yes, the marketing has gone up because of the pace at which we're coming out with products, and each product or each distribution channel requires marketing to support it. Yeah. So net, yes, my marketing dollars would have gone up, but your point is also correct. It's more efficient in terms of the spend, in terms of the returns. So, for example, what our auditors did. Our auditors no longer allow us to report what we call gross sales. So the number you see
net
that's
sales.
Up 35 is net, which is net of prizes. So $1 in sales, prize liability of 70 cents. Net. So what you see recorded is a net, right? And if you stop and think about it, right, we did over $27 billion in gross sales in the first quarter. When you aggregate that for the year, we're going to, for the first time, sell more than $100 billion in a year.
Of gross.
Of gross.
Got it.
You know, and that's huge. Not many companies in the country.
Another milestone. Yeah.
It's another record to go through. Perfect. You know, and that's before we have some other stuff down the pike to go.
We're going to come back to that point, Gary, on the brand.
Sure.
You know, and your opinion on the brand. We take another break on Business Live Extra. We'll talk about SVL's future plans with Gary Peart when we return. Welcome back to the final segment of Business Live Extra. The company recently launched Supreme Scratchers, and this has resulted in a tremendous start of the year for SVL. The product has gone viral and captured the imaginations of Jamaicans from all walks of life. How does SVL consistently keep its focus on innovation, rolling at the pace it does, and considering its earnings growth rate? What else is on the horizon for SVL? Will there be further Caribbean and/or international expansion for SVL and its products to look forward to? Shareholder value has increased exponentially since the changes made to the board about 4 years ago. We find out if the payout ratio will be maintained and how will this growth be maintained. Super Supreme joins us one last time to discuss this and more. Gary Peart, Executive Chairman, Supreme Ventures Limited. Gary, welcome back to BLE.
Thank you.
Hope you can make it for a third time. You know?
Well, we'll see.
See, you're doing pretty well today. On the point on branding, we were just talking about it. You know, you did get into SVL pretty quickly, rebranded as well, make some changes. I mean, more and more as you invest in companies, is that kind of a core mantra that you have?
Definitely.
And what's important about it?
It's the start and end of everything we do. So your brand is where is a store of all the positives in your business over the years. You know, so you could be black and blue, but this is what SVL stands for. It could be on a different type of business, but you know, once you see that SVL brand, you know what it stands for. So that's extremely important to us, and more importantly, that's the feedback we get from our customers, right?
They recognize the brand, it pops. They head into the stores.
They trust it. It's been there for them, That's what has helped them send their kids to school, etc.
How do you feel about your subsidiary brands? Happy with all of them? You've been rebranding them as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's something as we, we're focused on expanding the group. And as we expand the group, that is a strategic initiative that we're grappling with now. Do you call them Supreme X, or do you leave the name and say a subsidiary of Supreme? But by the end of the year, we'll figure that part out. But again, because of the importance of branding to us, it's something that we'll deal with pretty expeditiously. And the challenge is I have my expert Heather who deals with that.
Yes.
And she has to keep pace at the rate at which I'm getting new products and new companies. So that's her stress.
True, that's her. Gary, one thing, you picked up another subsidiary or company, kind of in this fintech division or segment, Michaela Financial.
Yes.
How much is that contributing? What's the outlook there? Is there a plan? I mean, of course, you have a lot of experience in microfinance in your capacities. Right. But is there a plan to really grow that business and take advantage of all your consumer data?
So Michaela is not technically fintech because they're really more brick and mortar. But in addition to Michaela, which you're correct, we have a subsidiary called Michaela, is that we actually have a fintech microfinance business.
Oh, you do?
It's called Evolve. Okay. And that is driven by an AI, artificial intelligence. And so you send in your information, it crunches the numbers, and then determine how much we can lend, etc.
And then like what, an RTGS just heads out?
Yes. So,
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have that, and we limit it to a particular segment of our business, as we go down the road. We have just hired a CEO for the fintech business, not a CEO, an innovation officer. My apologies, for the fintech business. That should start in June, because that's one of the things we're trying to do differently.
So you're building out a loan book there.
Yeah.
Let's say.
So there's actually two loan books. There's a fintech loan, and then there's a Michaela in terms of brick and mortar, and we go down the road. And what that has done, right? When I look on the business, and one of the simple things I've said to the team, right? From the start of Svl to 2017 or 2018, effectively. You put out 9 products, give or take a product every 2 years. We're now averaging 3 per year, yeah? And so that's a totally different business. So one of the things is that the pace at which we're going, what you have is that if you have a team that said, hey, we put the product out now so we can rest for a year and then we start working on another one for the second year. But now it's 3 per year. There's no rest. When you put it out, it's time to go and work on the next one, right? But
Gary, this business Evolve it's a real classic loan book where you can just run algorithms, you can run your loan book profiles and just get reports immediately.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So it's a business you could securitize, you could do anything with it in the future.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Any idea, any rates you can share with us at this point, or
no,
that's private sensitive?
It will get there. But the key point I was trying to get to, right, is that we have a bunch of products that we'll launch over the next 6 to 9 months on the fintech platform, because it's the way of the future. And right now, we currently have arguably the biggest online business in that space in the Caribbean, right? Because, as I said, my lottery business is online. You can buy every single lottery product, with the exception of Hot Pick, online. The last Super Lotto winner.
Is that when you say online? Is that done through like a SVL platform or a post-to-post platform?
It's done on an SV Games app. The name of it is SV Games.
Got you. Okay,
so you go and download SV Games.
So it's SV branded.
Correct.
Got you.
So you download it and you basically can go in and you can buy any one of our products.
And Gary, you're an executive chairman role, right?
Yes.
But what's kind of like the depth of the management team like? I mean, who you delegating to every day? Who's really running and kind of driving the business?
I'm the executive chairman of SVL Group. Within the group, there are several other subsidiaries. So you have Prime Sports. Jesus Johnson is the CEO for Prime Sports. You have Supreme Venture Services. Dennis Chung is the CEO for Supreme Venture Services. You have Caymanas, which is Lorna.
But who's kind of driving, like, say, the SV app, the lottery games, all that? Is that Jesus?
No, so Jesus would be one of the persons that's responsible, but we have a specific individual for each of the different products.
Oh, that's how it works. Okay.
Jesus is supported by Stefan and Dwayne Tolo.
Gotcha.
And so we break it out. And in essence, once you go through it, whichever product it is, whichever subsidiary, there is a specific person
somebody
that's
kind of in
accountable.
charge of that.
Right.
Yeah. And when you look at, the earnings, right? I mean,
Yes.
your dividends are fantastic. It's a cash cow business.
Right.
I mean, you make 37 cents and change. You pay out 34 cents. Is that expected to be kind of maintain that kind of heavy payout ratio?
Yeah.
Going forward?
Because, at the end of the day, as your earnings start to increase, that 10% adds up, right? I don't know how many analysts actually take the time, but if you dig deeper into that $1 billion quarter, you would find that we had between 80 to 100 million of amortizations. So some companies don't amortize their intangible assets. We do. So if I did not amortize that intangible asset, that's another 10 cents.
Boom, right there.
Yeah, another 10, whatever 80 million over 2.6 is, right?
Yeah.
So we're averaging about $300 million a year in amortizations, right? Which if we never did, would turn up as profit, but that's cash.
Right. And Gary, SVL, you had an announcement, went, Jamaica Stock Exchange, all over the media about expansion into, was it South Africa?
Yes.
Or some gaming platform. Is there other international, there's Guyana play with SVL, that's Caribbean, let's say, or so, but is there other expansion or is there more market share right here, in your backyard to keep going after?
So there's a combination, right? And this is what I was alluding to earlier, right? So effectively, SVL is a global company because we have a business in South Africa, we have a business in Guyana, right? So we're outside of Jamaica.
And how is South Africa going, kind of?
South Africa has been slow, primarily because they've been hit very hard by COVID. So when we struck the deal, COVID came. Since then, South Africa has dealt with the gaming industry very different than how Jamaica did. And so the restart has taken some time, right? But we're now getting back to where we should be. So when I speak about the delay, there are a lot of these things that would have already been done and ramped up, and your earnings would have been much higher than they are now.
Yes.
And so Guyana is a precursor to learning how to get into and go into different companies. And which is why one of the things we're now doing this year, I brought in Zara Rain, who's a change management expert. And, we've coined this moving at supreme speed.
Okay.
Because
there's a lot of S's I noticed.
Yeah, a lot of S's, right?
Supreme Scratchers, Super Supreme. Now we have Supreme Speed.
They have Supreme Speed because the pace at which the company now has to move because we have to catch up, right? And the challenge is this, right? The argument comes, Mr. Peart, you're unreasonable. We've just had $1 billion quarter. We've never had this. And I'm like, but guys, we're nowhere near the potential.
You're starting out of a fresh.
You're not about even starting fresh. We're nowhere near the potential.
Yeah.
And, ever since we've come out of COVID, the phone is ringing off. We're flying all over the place. There are a lot of deals to be made. There's a lot of transactions to be had. And I say this to you. There is a correlation to remittance and our revenue. There's a correlation to inflation and our revenue. And, so when you have a business that is this size, right, and you have in 10 and 15% inflation combined with devaluation, etc., right, it's going to move your top line, right?
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that people miss.
I guess it's like what Buffett said over the weekend. I mean, this is a business that's a fantastic inflation hedge.
It is.
For your
and
portfolio.
So it does well when the economy is doing well. It does well when the economy isn't. And
Gary, on that point, I want to end on. So, I mean, for you, executive share contract, you're taking shares in lieu of cash,
right.
1 year renewal, but it's great transparency for the market. A lot of companies have a role like this and they don't, send it down to the JSE, they don't talk about it. But it's a no-brainer for you. Take shares in lieu of cash. You're bullish on Supreme Ventures.
Well, I've always been. And, I came into this post initially with a 6-month contract.
Okay.
And it has been extended to a year. I know this is the third year.
Third year, okay.
Hopefully it's the final year. But the fact of the matter is that it aligns me with the shareholders.
Yes.
So I'm saying to the shareholders, this is what I'm doing. I'm building the value so that you can benefit as well, right? And I think it will do well. And, when you say you want to close, I want to close and say this. One of the key things that is now happening, right, is that, read about this philosophy of the incumbent and the insurgent, right? So startup companies are normally insurgent. You're hungry, you're trying to get market share, and the incumbent is supposed to be this big, fat, lazy company that has done it, that is just kicking back, right? And I've said to my guys, I've coined, you know, the insurgent incumbent, and that's what Supreme is. We are large. There's no ifs, ands about it, but there's nothing that prevents us to behave like a hungry.
It's clear you run like a startup. Your corporate action items come out more than the youngest company on the exchange.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
So, you know, and then the final point I'll make on governance, you know, because I'm executive chair, you know, the board appointed a lead independent director who is Duncan Stewart.
Yes.
And there are certain decisions that before they can be actioned, I have to bounce it off Duncan. You know, so it's a way to curb, for want of a better way, the potential power that I have. And it's not to say I would.
Like any conflicts of interest, etc.
Correct. So we have related party stuff on that, etc. You know, and so it works. And what happens is that there's a level of trust.
Yeah.
And execution.
Gary, $1 billion quarter. There's not much else to say. Congrats.
Thank you.
Fantastic results. Super Supreme. It's great having you.
Thank you very much.
Business Live Extra. Thanks for coming again. That's it for another edition of Business Live Extra. Remember, life is a lottery that we have already won. We've been talking with Gary Peart, Executive Chairman of Supreme Ventures Limited. Don't forget, you can watch us online at cvm.com/videos/Business Live Extra. Thanks for joining us.